Colonial archives are both indispensable and treacherous. They contain the official correspondence, administrative reports, missionary diaries, and travelers' narratives that form much of the written record for Africa during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Yet these sources were produced within structures of power designed to justify conquest, extract resources, and impose foreign governance. Their authors, colonial officials, missionaries, settlers, and explorers, carried assumptions of European superiority and rarely sought to understand African societies on their own terms. To use these sources critically is not to discard them, but to interrogate them, to recognize bias, assess reliability, and transform flawed primary materials into evidence for a more truthful historical understanding. This mastery guide provides a framework for evaluating colonial sources through provenance analysis, cross-referencing with indigenous knowledge, identification of authorial intent, and attention to the silences that archives preserve. 1. Understanding the nature of colonial bias. Before examining any colonial source, one must acknowledge that bias is not an occasional flaw, but a structural feature. Colonial sources were produced within a worldview that positioned Europe as civilized and Africa as primitive, justifying intervention as a civilizing mission. Eurocentrism shaped every aspect of documentation, the selection of what was recorded, the language used, the attribution of motives, and the very categories of description. For example, a British administrator's report from northern Rhodesia, colonial Zambia, might describe the Bemba Chitamakulu as a chief with superstitious rituals, failing to convey the sacred authority and complex political role the office held. Missionary accounts often depicted African religious practices as heathen or devil worship, ignoring the sophisticated theology and social functions of ancestral veneration. Travelers' narratives emphasized exoticism and danger, reflecting the desire to entertain European audiences rather than to understand African realities. To evaluate such sources, one must first ask, what assumptions does the author bring? What ideological purpose does the text serve? Identifying these biases is the first step toward using the source critically. 2. Provenance: who, when, where, and why. Provenance, the origin and history of a source, provides the foundation for reliability assessment. Every source must be subjected to rigorous provenance checks. Author: who wrote the document? What was their position? Colonial official, missionary, trader, settler. What were their qualifications, interests, and possible prejudices? A district commissioner writing to his superiors had different motivations than a missionary writing to a church society in London. The former sought to demonstrate administrative effectiveness, the latter to raise funds and support. Date and context: when was the source created? What was happening at that time? A report written during the suppression of a revolt, for example, the 1898-99 Bemba Uprising, will be colored by the need to justify military action. A missionary diary from the 1920s may reflect the shifting ideologies of indirect rule, or the impact of colonial taxation. Purpose and audience: why was the source produced and for whom? Official reports were written for colonial superiors, often to secure promotions or resources. Missionary letters were aimed at congregations and donors in Europe. Private diaries may offer more candid observations but still reflect personal biases. Understanding the intended audience helps decode omissions, exaggerations, and rhetorical strategies. Form and genre: is the source a formal report, a private letter, a newspaper article, or a memoir? Each genre has conventions that shape content. Administrative reports follow bureaucratic templates that downplay failures. Memoirs written years later are colored by nostalgia or the desire to shape legacy. For example, the writings of British explorer David Livingstone, though often cited as sympathetic to Africans, were produced within the context of anti-slavery campaigning and commercial expansion. His descriptions of African societies were filtered through his evangelical Christian perspective and his interest in promoting trade routes. provenance analysis reveals that even well-intentioned sources carry biases that must be critically evaluated. 3. Cross-referencing. The power of multiple perspectives. No single source, colonial or otherwise, can be taken as definitive. Reliability is established through corroboration. Cross-referencing colonial sources against indigenous accounts, oral traditions, archaeological evidence, and other colonial records is essential. Oral traditions. African societies preserved their histories through oral tradition, genealogies, praise poems, origin narratives, and court chronicles. For pre-colonial and early colonial periods, oral traditions often provide perspectives entirely absent from colonial archives. For instance, the Lunda Kingdom of Kazembe's history is richly documented in oral traditions collected by ethnographers such as Ian Cannison, which contradict or complicate Portuguese and British accounts of the kingdom's power and autonomy. Cross-referencing colonial reports with oral traditions reveals the ways Africans resisted, adapted, and remembered events that colonial officials either ignored or misunderstood. Indigenous written sources. In some regions, African societies produced written records in Arabic, for example Swahili chronicles, or later, in African languages using missionary orthographies. Though less common in Zambia before the colonial period, early African converts and clerks produced letters, petitions, and memoirs that offer alternative viewpoints. Archaeological and anthropological evidence, material evidence, pottery, settlement patterns, trade goods, can test the claims of colonial sources. For example, colonial administrators often asserted that African political systems were weak or chaotic before European rule. Archaeological research on the Bemba, Lunda, and Tonga has demonstrated complex settlement hierarchies, long-distance trade networks, and sophisticated ironworking that contradict such assertions. Multiple colonial sources. Comparing different colonial sources, administrative reports from adjacent districts, missionary accounts from different denominations, travelers' narratives, can reveal inconsistencies and highlight bias. A missionary might report a rebellion, where an administrator saw a tax dispute. Comparing the two reveals the conflicting agendas and interpretations. 4. Interrogating silences. What is not said. Archives are not neutral repositories, they reflect the power dynamics of their creation. Colonial archives systematically silence certain voices and topics. The historian's task is to interrogate these silences. These voices are absent. Colonial records rarely preserve the perspectives of women, commoners, children, or those who resisted colonial rule. They often record the views of chiefs who collaborated while ignoring those who fled or fought. What events were deemed unworthy of record? Colonial officials wrote about tax collection, labor recruitment, and native affairs but often ignored the daily lives, economic strategies, and cultural practices of African communities unless they directly impinged on colonial interests. What language erasures occur? When African names, terms, and concepts were translated or transliterated, meanings were often distorted. For example, the Bemba title Chitimakulu was reduced to paramount chief, losing its sacred and genealogical depth. What was intentionally omitted? Official reports frequently suppressed information about abuses, resistance, or failures. Missionary records might omit internal conflicts or doubts about the mission's impact. To recover what is silenced, historians turn to oral traditions, linguistic analysis, and careful reading against the grain using the source's own assumptions to infer what is missing. A district commissioner's complaint about lazy natives may actually indicate successful African evasion of forced labor. A missionary's frustration with backsliding converts may reveal the persistence of indigenous religious practices. 5. Transforming bias into evidence, a methodology. The goal of critical source evaluation is not to dismiss colonial sources as useless but to transform them into evidence. A biased source, when properly understood, reveals not only the events it purports to describe but also the mindset, ideology, and power structures of the author. The following methodological steps are essential. Contextualize the source. Place the source within its historical moment, considering the author's position, the colonial situation, and the broader events of the period. Identify language and framing. Analyze the vocabulary, metaphors, and narrative structures used. Terms like tribe, chief, rebellion, and superstition carry loaded meanings. Note what is praised and what is condemned, what is considered civilized or primitive. Compare with other sources. Test claims against oral traditions, indigenous accounts, archaeological data, and other colonial records. Corroboration strengthens reliability, contradictions invite deeper inquiry. Read against the grain, ask what the source reveals inadvertently. A report on pacification may inadvertently detail the scale of military violence. A missionary's list of converts may provide data on social dislocation. Use the source's own evidence to uncover perspectives it was designed to conceal. Assess reliability through consistency. Does the source's internal evidence hold together? Are dates, names, and locations consistent? Inconsistencies may indicate carelessness, deliberate deception, or the author's distance from events. Acknowledge limitations. No source is fully reliable or fully unreliable. The historian must specify what the source can and cannot tell us, being transparent about the limits of evidence. 6. Case study. Applying the framework to a colonial source. Consider a hypothetical 1904 British District Commissioner's report from northeastern Rhodesia stating, the local chief, Mwamba, is a man of little influence. His people are indolent and resistant to paying tax. They persist in heathen customs despite the efforts of missionaries. The only remedy is firm administration. Applying the mastery framework. Provenance. Author is a colonial official reporting to his superiors. Purpose is to justify stronger administrative measures and perhaps request military support. Bias. Eurocentric assumptions of African indolence, dismissal of indigenous religion, attribution of resistance to moral failings rather than political agency. Cross-reference. Oral traditions about Mwamba might portray him as a respected leader who organized resistance to taxation. Missionary records might show that heathen customs persisted because they met social needs that Christianity did not yet replace. Silences. The report says nothing about why the people resisted. Perhaps tax rates were crushing, or the census disrupted kinship obligations. It omits any African perspective. Transformation. Used critically, the report becomes evidence not of Mwamba's lack of influence but of effective African resistance that colonial authorities felt compelled to suppress. It reveals colonial officials' conceptual framework and the coercive nature of tax collection. 7. Mastering source-based examination. Mastery of source evaluation is not a checklist but a disciplined habit of critical questioning. The accomplished historian approaches every source, whether colonial archive or oral testimony, with a set of reflexive inquiries: who created this, and why? What power relationships shaped its production? What assumptions does it take for granted? What does it leave unsaid? How does it compare with other evidence? What can it legitimately tell us? In the context of Zambian history, this mastery is especially vital. Colonial archives were produced by a foreign power that sought to erase or marginalize African agency. Yet through rigorous evaluation, by interrogating silences, cross-referencing with oral traditions, dissecting authorial intent, and applying provenance checks, historians can recover the complexities of the past. Biased sources become not obstacles but windows into the colonial mindset, while the perspectives of African peoples, long silenced, are brought into dialogue with the written record. Conclusion: evaluating bias and reliability in colonial historical sources is an act of intellectual decolonization. It demands that we refuse to accept colonial narratives at face value, that we recognize the partiality of archives, and that we actively seek out the voices and perspectives that were excluded. By applying rigorous provenance analysis, cross-referencing diverse sources, and interrogating the silences that power creates, we transform problematic sources into evidence for a more truthful, nuanced, and inclusive history. Mastery of these techniques empowers us not only to understand the colonial past, but also to recognize how sources continue to shape our understanding of Africa and its peoples. In the hands of a critical historian, the colonial archive becomes not a monument to domination, but a terrain of contestation, one where the stories of the colonized can be recovered, and where history can be written with the integrity that justice demands.